Hi everyone, welcome back to my channel. My name is Rachel and today I am going to be talking about all of the books that I read in the month of August. So in the month of August, I was able to get 10 books read, which I am very happy with. I had quite a few successes this month. I also finished my reread of the Throne of Glass series in its totality, and I have a lot of very exciting books to share with you all. So before we get started, please make sure to hit the subscribe button so you never miss a bookish upload from me. Without further ado, let's get into it. Let's talk about the 10 books that I read in the month of August. The first book that I read in the month of August was Waking Olivia by Elizabeth O'Rourke. This is a Kindle Unlimited contemporary romance novel. This follows our titular character, Olivia. She is a cross-country runner for a university. She recently transferred to a new university after having some issues at her former one, and she ends up developing a relationship with her cross-country coach. This isn't quite an age gap romance though. I believe he is at most 5 years older than her, but slowly but surely these two come together. What I really liked about Olivia as a main character was she was so grumpy. Like, she was definitely a little bit rough around the edges for good reason. She's definitely been through a lot, but she's not very trusting of people. She's very tough and headstrong, and I did enjoy watching her armor and walls sort of break down as she developed this romance. I really loved this book. I ended up giving it 4 stars. It's a really solid sports romance, and also I think it was a good slow burn romance. They really did not get together until the very end. There was a lot of back and forth, and I felt that the end was gratifying and well deserved. I really love this book, and it's my very first Elizabeth O'Rourke book, and I'm excited to pick up more from her in the future. The next book I read is Blindside by Candy Steiner. This is a KU contemporary romance. It is a college sports romance, and it has fake dating. So in this book, we follow our main character. She is studying public relations at her university, and she works with the college's football team with their interactions with the press and the media, and she knows all the players very well. She is sort of this like bookworm, quiet but strong main character, and then she ends up fake dating Clay Johnson, who is like the college's golden boy. He is a very skilled football player. He's expected to go to the NFL. He's very popular and well known. The two strike up a deal to fake date because Clay wants to make his ex-girlfriend that he thought he was going to marry jealous because he wants to win her back, and then our main character wants to make this guy that she has had her eye on jealous and notice her, and what better way to get noticed than to date the star football player at their university. This was a really cute book. I gave this book 4 stars. I feel like the fake dating was done very well. What I liked about this fake dating dynamic so much was they were both very much interested in other people when they started fake dating, so I feel like their attraction towards each other was slow and gradual and not too quick. One of the problems I have with the fake dating trope is I feel like basically as soon as the couple in the book starts fake dating, you can already tell that they really like each other, or one of them is already really into each other, and while they did acknowledge their attraction to each other, they still very much had clear goals in mind of Clay wanting to get back with his ex-girlfriend and she wanting to get the attention of this musician on campus. So I liked it because it made the slow burn go slower, and I just really think that these two are so sweet. They are a hero and heroine that I loved rooting for. Clay Johnson, although he was kind of the star football player, you would think that he would kind of be a jerk, but he was a really sweet guy, and I appreciated how much he loved our main character for who she is. So this is a wonderful book, and also my first Candy Steiner. I will also definitely be picking up more books from her in the future. Okay, the next book that I read is To Love Jason Thorne by Ella Mays. So this book follows, I forget our main character's name, but basically when she is younger, when she is a child and into her teen years, she is in love with her brother's best friend, Jason Thorne. She has a huge infatuation with him and finds out when they are teenagers that he doesn't really feel the same. To me, that kind of makes sense because he's quite a bit older than her. I think when she is 14, he is 18, so that would make sense. But she is very heartbroken when she sort of inadvertently finds out that he does not feel the same about her. Fast forward like 10 years later, Jason Thorne ended up becoming a very famous actor, and our main character ended up becoming an author. Her book did very well, and a production company wants to adapt her book into a movie. Enter Jason Thorne becoming the star of her movie. So these two are reunited after not seeing each other for a while. Jason Thorne is so excited to see our main character. He thinks it's so cool to be reunited with her. She is a little bit apprehensive at first because she does still kind of view him as the boy who broke her heart. I'm gonna say right now, I think that that's kind of a ridiculous setup because she does sort of hold these feelings against him that when she was 14 and he was 18, he didn't like her. And I'm like, yeah, of course he didn't. He's 4 years older than you. So in the beginning of the book, she does kind of harbor a little bit of resentment towards him, which I didn't really understand. And I felt like it kind of started the novel off to a rough start because I just, like, that doesn't really make any sense to me. She sort of had this infatuation with him. He didn't reciprocate. And now she's an adult and she's still kind of holding on to those feelings. So that was kind of a weird start to the book, but she did sort of slowly start to let that go. As the movie enters production and Jason Thorne and our main character have to be around each other more, they start to fall for each other. Definitely a, I would say, sort of lust-forward romance. I don't really feel like we did get a lot of emotions from these two. I think there was just this attraction and this sort of infatuation with seeing each other after all these years, and a relationship forms. So I have not given a book 1 star in a very long time, and I did unfortunately give this book 1 star. I don't think that there's anything about this book that I like. I think the premise is amazing and I was really, really looking forward to it. I think it's a wonderful setup for a book, sort of that knowing each other as kids. You grow up, one of you is famous, the other one is the author of the adaptation that the famous person will be starring in. I'm all good with that. I really do like that setup. But number 1, I didn't really feel a lot of emotions from either of these characters that felt very deep, that felt very fully realized. I just feel like it was pretty lust forward and I wasn't connecting with either of the characters personally. There was conflict in this book that was created sort of by external characters, especially in the 3rd act breakup, that I just felt like was very left field. Why should we care about this? This doesn't really make any sense. So I didn't really love that. And my biggest issue that I have with this book was there were 2 dubcon non-con sex scenes that really, really put a bad taste in my mouth. I do know that dubcon and non-con can be something that when advertised like in a dark romance book, if you know what you're going into, that's totally fine, fair. But I think when it is in a sort of rom-com, sweet, fluffy romance and it's presented as something that is okay when it is absolutely not okay, it just really, really rubbed me the wrong way. So when the first scene happened, I was kind of like, wow, okay, was not expecting that. Let's see, let's keep going. Really did put a bad taste in my mouth at that point. But then when it happened again, I was just like, okay, why are basically most of the steamy scenes in this book featuring dubcon, non-con? It's just not something that I want to read about. And I think if I had sort of known that going in, I wouldn't have picked the book up. But once again, I feel like those scenes were sort of presented in a way that were meant to be like positive and, you know, just romantic spicy scenes. And for me, it made me very uncomfortable. So along with our main character was not someone who I felt was relatable or interesting. She was kind of annoying. Jason Thorne was like, whatever, fine. I don't really have any major criticisms for how he was characterized. I just think that overall he didn't really do anything for me. I also just think that from the plot of this book and comparing it to the execution of this book, I'm not really all that satisfied with it. And because of those 2 dubcon non-con scenes, I was just like, you know what? This is a 1-star book. When I give a book 2 stars, usually it's because I didn't like the book, but I can admit like there was one good aspect of it, or the writing was good. I liked this character. I thought the romance was well done, but everything else didn't work for me. There is truly nothing in this book that worked for me. I would not recommend this book to anyone, and I didn't like it. So I just really wasn't happy with it. I did not enjoy reading it. So I'm giving it 1 star, which I know is harsh, but it's just how I feel. It just really did not work for me. All right, the next book that I read in the month of August is Nightshade by Kari Lake. So this is a paranormal gothic romance. I was very, very excited for this. I think that the premise is really cool. We have angels, we have demons, we have this sort of purgatory world, and I was really looking forward to reading this. I've said this in so many videos, but I'm definitely getting into more of a fantasy mood. I'm always gonna read romance, but I think that I've been in such a heavy contemporary romance mood, and I feel that shifting as fall comes. So I thought I wanted to pick up a paranormal romance that had sort of fall, autumn vibes, and I was hoping that Nightshade would fulfill that. I will say, I did feature this book in one of my weekly vlogs, and the vibes of this book are 10 out of 10. It is very spooky and gothic and sort of creepy and cool, and I absolutely loved the gothic vibes that this book brought. I will say though that the story overall was just a little bit confusing. So this book is dual timeline. Our present day main character is a PhD student at a university in Chicago. She studies religious studies and theology and just all of that. And the novel opens with a homicide detective coming to her and saying, we have found these victims of murder throughout the city and they have had this religious marking left on them. The reason that they go to her is because this religious marking is very specific to a sort of infamous cult from many years past. And her father was somebody who was really obsessed with this cult and the idea that this cult had of a purgatory called Nightshade. Her father is missing / presumed dead, so they came to her as the next best option to see if they knew anything about what the marking meant and to see if they could help at all. This sets our main character on a paranormal journey. Things start happening in her home. She ends up sort of going on this adventure and she meets a very handsome, very morally gray angel demon-like being. In the other timeline, we are following a girl who, when we start her POV, her mother is being burned at the stake by the church because they think that she is a witch. She then has to sort of work for the church, repent for her mother's sins, basically kind of become a nun, and she sort of sets out on her own journey and kind of discovering some things within the church that she doesn't like, and also has a romance blossoming on her end. The setup of the book was wonderful, and in the first like 30%, I was really enjoying it and I was excited. I just think, number one, this book is like 600 something pages. It is way too long. It was way too long for how the plot was developed. I genuinely think that if this book had been 200 pages shorter, I would have given it 4 stars. I ended up giving it 3 stars because I just felt like it was dragging in a lot of places. We were given too much information at times that didn't really help to, I think, develop the plot any better. And also, there were so many plot lines. I applaud Carrie Lake for going for it and adding all these connections to these different things, but it just wasn't really making sense to me and I had a hard time following it. So I think that I got a little bit distracted and caught up in everything that was going on. I wasn't really sure what I was supposed to be paying attention to. And then the ending, I'm not like mad at it, but I'm not in love with it. I was planning to pick up the second book in this duology. I don't know if I'm going to do that. It might be way down the line when I feel in the mood because I might be curious about what happens with our main characters in the end, but vibes were immaculate. The plot lines were all over the place. So this is a 3-star book. I think that this could be a better book for someone else. I just don't really think that it worked for me. Okay, and then the next book that I read is I'm Glad My Mom Died by Jennette McCurdy. This is a nonfiction memoir. Jennette McCurdy was an actress on Nickelodeon. She starred very famously as Sam in iCarly. She was also in a spinoff of iCarly called Sam and Cat. So I was very keen on reading this book. Jennette McCurdy is somebody that I have followed for a long time. I've been watching her interviews over the years, sort of building up to the release of this book, and I knew like bits and pieces about what she went through as a child. If you do not know, this memoir details her childhood and the abuse that she suffered at the hands of her mother, and also talks about just how hard and difficult and really terrible at times it was to be a child actor. This book was absolutely fantastic, and I cannot recommend it enough. Number one, though, I will absolutely say please check the trigger warnings for this book. There is trigger warnings for sexual abuse, physical abuse, mental emotional abuse. There are trigger warnings for eating disorders and also substance abuse. This is a very heavy book. Obviously, the title I think kind of alludes to that Jennette really did suffer as a child and, has definitely done a lot of work in her life to get to the place now where she can write this memoir. But I thought that it was so well done. Jennette McCurdy is great at writing, and she also narrated the audiobook. I would 100% recommend, if you are going to read this book, listen to the audiobook because Jennette does a fantastic job. It was really eye-opening to see just how much she struggled through the years. Growing up watching iCarly, you think that those actors just have amazing lives, and Jennette really went through it and has come out on the other side as such a beautiful and strong person, and I was so touched by this book. I finished it in one sitting. I could not put it down, and I am so glad that I read this. So 10 out of 10 recommend. It was absolutely fantastic. Another absolutely fantastic book was You Made a Fool of Death with Your Beauty by Akwaeke Emezi. So this is a romance novel. It does sort of teeter the line of literary fiction and romance, but I think it's definitely more romance. Our main character's name is Faye. Faye unfortunately suffered the loss of her husband 5 years ago, and in that time she has not delved into the world of romance at all. She has not dated, hooked up with anyone, anything. But her best friend tells her like, hey, you need to get back out there, you need to find happiness, whatever that looks like. Faye sets out sort of on this dating journey, and she meets a guy named Nasir. Nasir is definitely willing to take things slow with her as she figures out what she wants out of a relationship, and he ends up inviting her to go visit his father and participate in this art gallery showing that his father has connections with. When Faye and Nasir arrive and she meets Nasir's dad, who's named Alim, she is instantly attracted to him. She also realizes that Nasir did not tell her that his dad is a very famous world-renowned chef. She is a little bit familiar with him, but she is just absolutely stunned by how beautiful this man is, and she feels this instant attraction to him. So this is a forbidden age gap romance. I think there's a lot more heart to it though than sort of the typical age gap romance, and I found this book to be absolutely beautiful. It has those fun romance elements. It has tons of tension, tons of angst, but we also have this added really beautiful layer of talking about grief and moving on and what that looks like and how how people can grow from those situations. Alim and Faye have a lot more in common than they first realize, and watching their relationship blossom was very, very beautiful. I also really appreciated the emphasis on food in this novel and also the location. They're on this like tropical island, and of course, because Alim is this world-renowned chef, there's a lot of food descriptors that I always enjoy. I feel like it really rounds out a book when those smaller details like setting or food or whatever can be explored a bit more. So I think that it made the entire reading experience very immersive. I 100% recommend this. This is a 5-star. This book was beautiful. It was heart-wrenching. It was spicy. It was wonderful. So I am so glad that I read this book, and I absolutely loved it. All right, the next book that I read in the month of August was Twilight by Stephenie Meyer. This was a reread. My friend Cami over at Burrows and Books is co-hosting a Twilight read-along, sort of for the rest of the year, I believe. And in August, we were meant to read Twilight. As I said, I have read this book before. I listened to the audiobook, and it was fun. It was a good time. I don't really have too much to say about Twilight. It's Twilight. I actually read these books for the first time either a year or two ago. I did not read them as they were coming out, but it was fun. I definitely prefer the movies. I don't know if that's an unpopular opinion, but I do because I love Robert Pattinson. I gave this book 4 stars. I think I will 100% admit that that is probably just because of the love that I have for the movies, and I just sort of let the movie play out in my head while I listen to this audiobook. But I do think that this is a fun read. You know, it's Twilight. I take it for what it is. It's not the best book in the world. Kind of how I feel about this book is like, is Twilight good? No. But is Twilight good? Yes. So that is sort of my overall feelings for the book. I had a lot of fun reading it, and honestly, it just made me want to rewatch the movies again. All right, and then the last 3 books that I read in the month of August are the last 3 Throne of Glass books. So I read Empire of Storms, Tower of Dawn, and then I finished with the finale of the series Kingdom of Ash. So let me talk about these 2 first together because I did do the tandem read. If you don't know, Empire of Storms comes first, and then Tower of Dawn comes second, and then you read the finale. But because this book follows sort of just one character's POV, and then this book follows a bunch of the other characters' POVs, it does sort of feel jarring, I think, to get out of this world and go into this and only be with this character for 600 something pages. And so a wonderful soul on the internet created a tandem read guide because the storylines in these books happen at the same time. So basically you can read this as one giant novel, so not to miss the characters in this book and also experience this, but at the same time, also this has a ginormous cliffhanger at the end of it, and so having to stop and then read this after is just kind of like a buzzkill. So I did the tandem read for the first time, and I really enjoyed it. As I said, it just felt like one giant novel. I ended up giving Empire of Storms 5 stars. I also gave Empire of Storms 5 stars when I read it for the first time. This is one of my favorite books in the series. My top 3 are Queen of Shadows, Heir of Fire, and Empire of Storms, and depending on how I am feeling, those 3 books can sort of be interchangeable, but I love this book. There's a ton of action in it. There is romance, and I just think that it is definitely one of the stronger books in the series. I gave Tower of Dawn 4 stars on my reread. I just don't love the main character of this book. I don't care. I don't yeah, whatever. It's just, it is what it is. But I think one of the best things about this book is the setting. The setting is beautiful. I think it's very well described. I think it's very well done. I think a very interesting world lies within this book. And I just wish that the characters in this book could have gone here so that I wasn't in you-know-who's head the whole time. But I still really enjoy it. It still has value. I just don't like it as much as the other books in the series. And then we have Kingdom of Ash, which is the almost 1,000 page finale of Throne of Glass. I absolutely love this book so much. Reading this was very emotional. It's crazy because I've already read this, but during the sort of perilous and intense scenes, I was getting nervous. I was getting anxious. I was like, are we going to be able to get out of this? Which is ridiculous because, as I said, I've already read this, but I really adore this finale. I did rate this book 5 stars. There is one thing that happens at the end of this book that I don't enjoy. I wish didn't happen, but I still love this book. It brings out so many emotions from me. I rate based on basically how does the book make me feel after, and it is a very strong 5-star feeling. Some of my favorite scenes in the entire series happen in this book, and I just think it's a very well done finale. It's very long, but for good reason. So much happens in this book, and I think that it wraps the series up very nicely, and I am just so sad that my reread of the series is over. This reread did reaffirm that this is my favorite series. I absolutely love it. I love the journey that Celaena goes on, and it was just like such a joy to reread this, and it was so comforting to me. So as always, I 10 out of 10 recommend this series, and I I'm looking forward to rereading it one day. All right, so that is it for my August wrap up. If you made it to this point in the video, go ahead and leave the crossed swords to represent Throne of Glass if you wanted to let me know that you made it this far. As always, my Instagram and my Goodreads are linked down below. You are welcome to follow me on there at any time. I really, really appreciate that you watched this video. I hope that you are having a fantastic day, and I will catch you guys in the next one.